Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laura Edelman, and I'm one of the SAP Business ByDesign consultants here at S&T, and I'll be presenting Customizing SAP Business ByDesign for your business today. So welcome to Enbridge 2016. To get started, I would like you to think about what your ideal ERP software would include. It's probably got a good amount of features specific to your company's needs. And now, this is possible to have these features in your system. Typically, though, out of the box, these systems don't work 100% exactly how you would like them to. Sometimes it just doesn't have the data you need, like a particular way to categorize orders, for example. Or maybe your orders are already sorted into groups, but you still need those categories available for reporting. Or maybe finance, maybe a totally different section, needs to also be able to see what type of order it was. But say, since there's no built-in way for them to see it, people have to use a workaround, and sometimes they forget. And it turns into a lot of time wasted dealing with an issue that you would think everyone runs into and needs fixed. My point is that there's an endless number of relatively minor tweaks and fixes that you would think would be pretty easy to make. And hopefully, after this session, they will be. Today, I'm going to be going over some of the ways you can customize SAP Business ByDesign to address exactly those kinds of issues. I'll be showing you some built-in features that you yourself can use to add consistency, transparency, and detail to the way you run your business. Now, you don't need to know how to code or manipulate databases. This is all pretty user-friendly stuff, and it's all done through the front end in ByDesign itself. I'm going to start with a summary of the tools that we'll be looking at today and how they're connected to each other. Next, I'm going to go into ByDesign itself and show you them in action. Finally, we'll have some time for questions at the end. Feel free to enter them as we go, and I will see them and I will adjust them at the end, but please remember to add some context if it's specific though. What does that button do? Could be about a lot of buttons do. Could be about a lot of buttons. What does the mass change button in the material screen do? That will help me answer your question. Now, before I get too far into explaining things, or not explaining them if you're all already ByDesign experts, I would like to ask you a quick question about your experience with customizing SAP Business ByDesign. Have you, yourself, personally used Adaptation Mode in ByDesign before? If it's been a while, and really not feeling like yes, it's applicable, it's okay to say no, or if you're like really in depth or you just know a little bit, yes, it's fine. So just give it a couple more seconds. Thank you. Okay, so, all right, it looks like we've got about 50-50. Okay, so I'll add some notes for the more in-depth stuff, and I'll also try to give a nice detailed explanation of what we're going to be looking at. So, first of all, we're going to be looking at Adaptation Mode. This is a special mode inside of ByDesign that allows certain users to make certain kinds of changes that apply to every user in the system. This can include giving them something they can use or something they can see. For example, extension fields. These are custom-made data fields specific to your particular tenant. You can create them yourself, and they will only be in your system. These can be created by users with access to Adaptation Mode in ByDesign itself. There are a number of different types, which we'll take a look at later. They're good for adding different types of non-standard data as well, non-standard field standard data. For example, a drop-down list or a date. And once you've created a field, you can extend it to different places in the system using a subsection of Adaptation Mode called Further Usage. Fields can be added to a lot of different things here. For example, they can be added to later documents in a process. They can also be added to reports. or form templates as well. So once you've set up your field, created it and extended it, and have it where you need to be, usually you'll need to populate it, or sometimes a lot at once. So to do that, one tool you can use is the Mass Change tool. It's exactly what it sounds like. It lets you fill in a lot of fields or a lot of records at once. And when you have hundreds or thousands of records that need to be updated, for example, in account master data, it's handy to be able to do all of those in one place rather than going into each screen and individually changing things. So the Mass Change tool can help you do that. This is also on the front end. Lastly, we'll be looking at reports. These give a meaningful context for the data that was just created. Reports could have their own standalone session, but today we're going to focus specifically on how they're related to extension fields, which are created in adaptation mode. For now, though, let's start at the beginning of the whole process by looking at adaptation mode in ByDesign in a little more detail. For this demo, I'm going to be adding an indicator in the product master data for whether or not a material is active in the system. You can see that I'm already in adaptation mode. Everything looks mostly the same, besides the convenient bar at the top that tells us that we are in adaptation mode. Now, to get into adaptation mode, which I'm already in, I can click Adapt in the upper right. And if I wasn't in adaptation mode, this would say Enter Adaptation Mode, and I would click that and it would bring me here. If the Adapt button isn't there, then that means that your user just doesn't have the access rights to it. Remember, this is restricted functionality. This is so that the system doesn't end up with extra or redundant fields or fields that aren't connected to things. It keeps everything tidy. And in case you're wondering what's with all of the cylinders and heaters here, these are products for a fictional heating and cooling company called Almica, whose data we'll be using for this demo today. The field that I'll be creating is pretty simple. And in this system, in fact, it's also actually redundant. So let's just say, for the sake of example, that this is how things are done in the legacy system. And management wants things to be exactly how they used to. In an actual situation like this, we would be asking questions about what value this adds from a practical standpoint. However, this is the demo, so this is what we're going to do. From here, I'm going to click Adapt Edit Screen. If you're more familiar with ByDesign functionality, this may remind you of the Personalize This Screen feature, which has a very similar layout. The big difference is that changes made in adaptation mode affect every user in the system. Changes made through Personalize, however, only affect the screens of the user that made them. In the Screen Layout tab to the right, which opens by default, I can make changes to different sections. The section that I have selected, you can see, is highlighted in yellow on the left. In some cases, you can even hide sections entirely. But since I would like to add an indicator, I'm going to go to the next section down on the right, which is called Extension Fields. And from here, I'm going to click Add. There are a number of different types of fields available. For example, the default one is a free text field. There are also fields like date, which provides you with a value select or help. You can also add things like a list of fields, which gives you a list. It allows you to create a list that users can select a value from. In this case, though, we're going to be using an indicator type field. And this one is just a simple checkbox. It's either a checked yes or no. I'm going to name this field active, and you'll notice that as I fill in the field label, the technical name will also be automatically filled in as well. From here, I'm going to click Save. And after saving, the material or the active field will show up in this section with the other already existing extension field. At this point, the Edit button can be used to change things like the display name, or you can change the options in the list type field. For any developers in the audience, please note that the technical name is permanent, so be sure it's spelled right, or you'll be writing code about things like haters and bowlers instead of heaters and boilers. For everyone, please note that the technical names must be identical in test and production. Otherwise, the field won't behave properly when you move from test to production on things like forms or SDK solutions that the field is used in. Now that I've created the field, I can do things like make it visible or invisible. You can see it shows up to the right. And I could also move it around if I went to the Screen Layout tab. For now, though, I'm going to need this field more places than just the material master data. To make that happen, I'm going to enter the subsection of Adaptation Mode called Further Usage. Further usage is a subsection of Adaptation Mode that allows you to extend extension fields to context besides where the field itself was created. It's very important to note the business context and also the field that you're using when you're in further usage. What object and the part of the object that the field is actually anchored to is what determines where it can be made available. So in this case, it's anchored to the general information for a material. We can also see in Edit Screen the business context above the extension field here. ByDesign will show you what you can do in this particular context by providing a list of options, or not if there aren't any available. This tab in particular, Form Templates, is for extending fields to form templates. I don't have any from this particular context, though, which again is material with general information. There aren't any forms that use this information directly to create a meaningful document. However, if I extended this to sales orders and opened up Adaptation Mode and further usage there, I could put it on the sales order confirmation form template using this tab, which would be populated because there are things that I can extend it to from that context. Having these context-based lists is a really handy feature that helps keep things organized in the database. It helps so that you don't end up with unconnected empty fields in places that they don't really belong. One place that I can add this field to from here is data sources and reports. In this case, the field can be added to any or all three of these data sources. And if they have any reports connected to them, those can be added, they can be added to that report as well. So if you recall my example from earlier about sorting orders and reports based on an extension field, if you created an extension field, probably a list type, that had orders, you could go here to enable sorting by them on reports. Adding a field in the Enterprise Search tab is a tool that allows you to search the entire system based on this field. This is particularly handy for fields with unique identifying data, for example, a special SKU or serial number. If I wanted to add it to Enterprise Search, I would click Add Field. But for now, I'm going to go to the tab that I spend probably the most time in. And this is the Extension Scenarios tab. Again, this is the tab that I use the most because it lets me push data through the system. So let's say that I wanted this tab, that I wanted this field to appear on sales order items. this is the extension scenario that I would use for it, material general information to sales item. So if I added it to this, then afterwards, when a material was entered on a sales order, the data would pull in the value for this field from the material master data. If I click the arrow to the left, I can see that this is actually a couple of different scenarios bundled together. If I wanted to add it to just sales orders or just customer returns, I could highlight that row and click Add Field. Usually, though, when I want to add it to any one of these, I typically want to add it to all of them. So, the next tab over is related to web services or just services. These are what ByDesign uses to communicate with other platforms, for example, Jitterbit or PasteJet. So if you need a front-end extension field to be used in integration, this is where you would get that started. So sometimes this tab has things in it, sometimes it doesn't. In ByDesign, something that a business sells is generally called a product. It's split into two categories, which are materials, which are physical objects, which is the context that we're in now, or services, which are intangible services that a business provides. Since they're so similar, but they're still technically different things, ByDesign has just provided an easy way to add the field to both using the additional business context tab. But since I'm done in further usage, though, I can go ahead and close out of here. Any changes that I were to make would be automatically saved, which is why there's no designated button for it. Now that I've created a new extension field, I'm going to need to fill it in, because all that I have done is created the field. Everywhere that it's available, it's blank. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to close out of the edit screen. I want to leave without saving my changes. And the reason that I close out is because to save things in adaptation mode, well, you can't save things in adaptation mode, that's the reason. So if you think about this, this makes a lot of sense. If you're rearranging the back end, if you're adding things to it, then you don't want your system trying to juggle editing and saving at the same time. There's a lot of data errors that can come from that. So to protect your system from that happening, it just disables saving in adaptation mode in the first place. Once I've closed out and entered normal functionality again, I can access the mass change tool from this material master data overview. But first, I'll need to select the records that I want to update. There are a couple of search tools that I can use here to pare down the data. For example, if I type cylinder, or just the first part, I'm searching here using wildcards, then the system will search a bunch of different fields, and anything that meets that criteria will fit. For example, if it's in the description, it will show this one is the product is insulation, but since the product category contains these letters, it also shows up as well. If I wanted to search more particular fields, I can search in them individually. For example, if I only wanted it to search the product category for a cylinder, then, well, again, it has the same thing. If I wanted it to search the material description only, though, and not have the installation, then I can put it in the material description. For now, though, what I'm going to use is this third tool, sorting and filtering, that lets you do a quick search by any of the columns that are available. In this case, I'm going to search for the product category cylinder. from here, I select all the records that I want. That was Shift-click if you like shortcuts. And I'm going to click Mass Change. Now, the first thing that I'll need to do when I get into the screen is actually add my new extension field to the screen using Adaptation Mode. If this seems like a lot of extra clicks, think about what would happen if it was the opposite. So, for example, what if creating a new set field added it to everywhere that it could be available? You would have to hide it from a lot of places, which is, believe me, it's a lot of screens. And think of the mess that could happen from that. If a lot of employees suddenly see a new field and they have no explanation of what's happening or why it showed up. So best case scenario, maybe they'll ignore it, or they may even start using it incorrectly, and in that case, they have to learn to do it correctly again. When you create screen changes, one thing to be sure that you do is click the Overwrite Individual Personalization Changes. This makes sure that all of your users get the new functionality that you're giving them using Adaptation Mode. And once the screen has loaded with the change saved, I'll need to exit Adaptation Mode. Again, because I can't save data while I'm in here. I can either modify the structure or I can save it, but I can't do both. I have to be in the regular functionality to be able to do this. So now that I'm here, I can make all of these products active, for example. This top bar allows me to fill in the data for all of the records or all of the selected records, for example. So let's say that all of these need to be 2 feet high, and they all need to be active. What I can do is apply the mass change to all items. And you can see that it fills in and that the field at the top clears. I can also change items individually here. Or if I wanted to change just a couple of items, then I could do it that way as well. You can also do, again, you can do manual edits. You can't edit things where the box is grayed out, though. For example, you can't edit the material ID or the base unit of measurement because they're locked. Now, another tool that can be used to fill in existing records, particularly if you're a key user because the process is more involved, is the Excel migration template. If you've worked with these in an implementation, they will look very familiar. They basically are the same. And in this case, this allows you to upload things from, it allows you to change a lot of records at once. The big difference between this and the mass change tool is that you can also add records using a particular type of migration mode. The reason that I suggest that this is only for more advanced users, key users, even though Excel may be more comfortable to work in, is because the process for uploading this kind of template is more intensive. It involves data cleanup, which includes matching the system code. You need to know where those are or how to find them. There's also an element of verification that goes on. And before the data is actually uploaded, there's also an import simulation that takes place as well. So there's a lot more steps that go into this. It is more involved, and it is more of an option for key users. But I did want to make you aware that it exists, and it's handy especially if you need data for new records. Now, once the data has been filled in, one way or another, you begin to auto-populate on transactions. That's one of the wonderful things about extension scenarios. They allow you to move the field automatically through the system. They allow you to move the data automatically, so you don't have to worry about typos or anything of that nature. So in this example, I have a sales order. And the thing to note about using this new data in transactions is that the data is pulled in from a particular point in time. Well, the reason that I emphasize that last bit is because data is time dependent. What I mean by that is in transactional data. For example, a sales order or an outbound delivery or an invoice. When the data is pulled in and saved, that happens when the document is created, or for line items when the product is entered. So what this means is if you create a sales order, then add an extension field to material data and populate it and extend it to all the places it needs to be and all the screens that it needs to be on. Even if you've done that, when you open the sales order again, the field will still be blank. This is because when you created the order, the data didn't exist yet. Likewise, if a field is extended from sales orders to customer invoices, this process flow uses data from the preceding document. It doesn't retrieve it from the master data every time it's entered. So if the field's not filled in on the sales order or service order, it's not going to be filled in on the invoice either. So it has to be there at the beginning of the process for it to show up at the end. However, as that goes, if you create a sales order after you've set up and populated your extension field, and then the data will flow through the way you would like it to. In case you're wondering why ByDesign doesn't check the fields every time it loads, it's a performance thing. It's a little developer speak. Doing all of the retrievals and checking through associations, it takes time. So think about entering material. Think of the master data we were just looking at. Now, there are a lot of fields that get pulled in when the product is entered. So if you have an order, for example, with 30 or 50 items on it, that adds up to a lot of time looking up data that has more than likely not changed at all since you've entered it. So ByDesign bypasses that altogether and saves the data to the order, and that just makes loading a lot faster. So enough explanation. Here's what autofilling your extension fields looks like on an actual document. So I pulled up the sales order with the discontinued extension field visible in the item. This is another indicator type that you may have seen earlier. And when I enter a product, the system will pull in the product's master data from that point in time, including that particular field. So for example, if I pull in cylinder, if you're looking at the column on the discontinued on the mass data update tool, you'd see that this product was discontinued, and this fills in automatically. If I enter another product, for example, one that I didn't fill the discontinued checkbox on, it was a totally different product category, then you can see that this field isn't checked. If it's not checked here, that means it's not checked in the unit master data. So you can also see that the extension field blends right in with the out-of-the-box features. It keeps everything looking sleek and put together, and like everything belongs where it is. This is especially important if you need these on customer-facing forms. They also blend in there. And remember that you can also make changes to default fields in adaptation mode as well. So I'm going to enter that and show you what some of these changes are. So adapt, edit screen. And now that I'm here, I can do things like make an individual field visible or invisible, for example, the currency. Or you can also make extensions, or you can also make fields, whether they're extension or default, mandatory as well. For example, if I want the employee responsible to be mandatory, okay. What I could do is click mandatory. It's grayed out for the moment. And that would add a blue asterisk next to the field. So it would blend in, again, looking like any other mandatory field. The system runs a check on these fields before certain actions, just to make sure that a value is in them. You can also make the fields read-only as well, using the read-only button. So once the data has been filled in, besides using it in transactions, one thing that you can do is also look at it in reports. This is a report that I've already put together, again, using the discontinued indicator type extension field. In this particular case, it shows fields that are checked, fields where the value is yes or true as an X, and fields where they aren't as a pound or null. So you can have any kind of field appear in this report, though. It can be text type, date type, indicator type. If you're new to ByDesign reports, this setup may remind you of pivot tables in Excel. They do work very similarly. If you would really prefer to just do your reporting in Excel, you can export the data and use all of the native Excel functionality, as well as some extra features in the ByDesign add-on that's available for the program. In this particular report, though, it just tells us about materials, namely what's the material ID, the description, a couple of other things, but namely this extension field, discontinued, and whether or not the material is discontinued. A more practical example of using an extension field on reports would be filtering based on the types of orders for sales orders, for example. So maybe the company is very interested in orders that have particular kinds of parts on them. If you wanted to use an indicator field still, you could create a header level indicator extension field on sales orders and check the box for orders that have it. Now, ideally, whether or not this would be checked would be automatic, but as far as reports go, they can be filtered down, in this case, using orders that only have that particular kind of part on them, for example. You can also save what you've put together on the screen by creating views and selections. I've actually already set one of each up for today. The view is what's in the column on the left. In this case, I have a view called Demo View, and it's this arrangement and combination of columns. And this part is the selection. So this one is initial, everything is just blank. If I wanted to see only items that were not discontinued, I can save that here, and we can get some pretty complicated combinations going. If I only wanted to see discontinued items, I can see those as well. Now, you can save, let's see, and this is a lot of functionality. Again, reports are, they're big and they're complicated, and they can be really helpful for making decisions. But again, that's a topic for another time. We pass through the demo. Now, I hope this session has given you some ideas for running a more efficient business. There's a lot of power in these features, and you yourself can use them to make some really big positive changes happen for your business without really all that much time or effort up front. If what we've looked at today just looks like too much trouble to do internally, we can certainly lend a hand. Or if what we've covered today isn't as extensive as what you'd hoped for, we also have experience doing other customizations, including back-end customizations. anything from auto-populating fields based on other fields to creating an entirely new work center. Advanced form customization is also a popular request. Really anything we can do to help you. Does anyone have any questions about what we've covered today?
Yeah, Laura. Hey guys, this is Ken. It looks like we got a question from Lindsay. She mentioned, is the mass change button available for a lot of different master data type areas? Is it authorization driven? She hasn't been able to notice those before. So Laura, if you could just speak to which mass changes are available, and I have a couple of ideas there that I can help jump in and explain some of that for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the short answer there is it is available for several kinds of master data types. The ones that I'm aware of are the materials, definitely, accounts, that sort of thing. As far as permissions go, Ken, you may be able to speak more to this in particular.
Sure. And since I didn't get to introduce myself in the beginning, my name is Ken Erb. I'm the practice manager at FMT for SAP ByDesign. So I jumped on this call to help moderate and help answer any questions here, and just help Laura with anything that we might run into here. So this question is a really good question. To answer your question, Lindsay, there are two major areas for mass data change as it pertains to master data, and those are materials and services. There's also functionality within the account management work center that allows you to update account data and then also contact data. So those are the four major areas that you can do it. And then also in addition to that, there's a couple of extra features that SAP has released to us that allows us to maintain cross account data. So basically sales data that you would use to map master records to sales units and such, you can default those to a set of sales units that you want to on a mass level and basically drive it as a default setting for all of your accounts. So while it's not a mass data update, it is a piece of functionality that was kind of missing that they brought in probably 4 or 5 updates ago. That's been a pretty big game changer as it pertains to mass data in SAP. We also had another question come in that was a little off topic that had to do with key figures. So I figure I'll just address it on the call. I'm not sure if everybody saw it. But the question was, as it pertains to key figures, is it possible to create a key figure that would be used in the opportunity pipeline to create a report that would broadcast to all of the salespeople and be able to limit those opportunities to changes that have happened in the last 7 days? Obviously, the business process here sounds like creating a report that will broadcast. That's easy, and by design you can certainly do that. And then in addition to that, creating the report to filter on opportunities that have been changed in the last 7 days. So we can certainly do that. You might not be able to do it with the report directly out of the box, but what we could do is bring in something like last change date into the report, create a selection based on that for any changed date within the last 7 days and filter that out. And then what would remain is obviously open opportunities that have not been changed. So that would be a way to create the report with the selection that you want. And then in addition to that, create a broadcast that either you can hard code emails into, so you could hard code your sales team into it, or create some sort of a email distribution group within your email server or Office 365 or whatever it is for your sales team, and then only drop in that one distribution group there. That would probably drive what you're looking for there. And then I think we have another question. We also had another question regarding whether or not we can get this webinar, and we certainly can. We'll publish it to our recorded webinars on our fmt.com or fmtconsultants.com. So that'll be available there probably in the next day or two, probably. So yes, you'll absolutely have access to this and the slides that we have here. And then taking a look here, I think we've addressed all of the questions that were on the call. So that said, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. So Laura, thank you very much. You obviously did a very good job here. You went through all this and showed everybody all of the very fine details of adding these additional fields and mass data updates. So appreciate your time there. And I hope this was of value to all of you guys. And from FMT, we say thank you for joining us. And we hope to see you if you're not a customer of ours already. And if you are, we can't wait to see you again. So thanks, guys. Thanks, Laura.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everyone else who's on the call.